Welcome back to Mortuary Mayhem, a podcast by funeral service professionals for funeral service professionals, where any day above ground is a good one.
Joining us today, we have Bill A Johnston, author and the owner of Post and Boost. Bill, I know that you've authored a couple books. This is not the first one, right?
That's right. I've written a book, and by the way, Dan, it's great to be with you on today's podcast. So I'm excited to be a part of your show. I have done two versions of this book. It's called How Facebook Works for Funeral Homes, and that's been a successful book for us. In fact, you can see it behind me. And then this book we are just releasing on Kindle. This is on Thursday for 99 cents. It's a download version for just 99 cents. And this book here is very exciting, Dan, because it's not only it's our third book, but it's also, I think, it's our best one.
Absolutely. The consumer's journey to purchasing funeral services, a marketing roadmap for growing market share and revenue. So,
yeah.
Okay. So we're looking to grow the business and get into a market and maybe break out of our traditional means that we've survived off of all these generations, right?
Yeah. Well, and you know this too, Dan, that funeral homes as a business hesitate to advertise, and there are a number of good reasons for that. One of which is that funeral homes in the past may have never really purchased advertising to the point where it worked. It was successful. And as I talk about funeral homes, I speak nationally on this topic. In fact, we'll be in New Jersey in September for the New Jersey Funeral Directors event. When I speak on this topic, there's always a hesitancy to advertise for funeral homes because it doesn't work. But the thing that you have to remember is funeral homes, like any other business, are retail advertisers. I mean, you think about when the funeral industry first began, it started in a furniture store. So furniture stores advertise, obviously. So shouldn't funeral homes be able to advertise as well? So that's kind of how the book starts, is helping funeral homes understand that they are still retail businesses in a retail environment.
Yeah, I think something that we forget. I think that we are afraid to maybe come across as salespeople. So we're sitting at that table, we're meeting with families, and and I know maybe we do get some backlash of, oh, they're trying to upsell you, they're trying to do this, and so maybe we do. Do you feel like we take that backseat approach some days to avoid that? That maybe we're not doing what we could, or how can we improve?
Well, I can tell you that some of the hesitancies, one of the webinars that I do is called Busting the Myths for Local Advertising for Funeral Homes. And some of the myths fit this part of our conversation today. One myth is that funeral homes don't want to be perceived as, advertising something that's based on opportunity or being opportunistic. And so one of the things I always talk about is that let me just show you some ads by insurance companies. And they'll show a picture, like here's a picture of Grandpa, and it says, when you leave, be sure that others behind are secure. And I'm thinking to myself, well, who's going anywhere? And the answer is that large insurance companies have no problems advertising the death benefit. So funeral homes should look at that and say, well, if they can do it, so can we. So that's one of the myths. And then another one of the other myths out there is everybody knows who we are. I mean, most funeral homes, many funeral homes, especially family owned, locally owned, that they've been in the market for decades. There's a perception that everybody knows who they are. Well, if you intend to grow your business, and let's just say that you wanted to grow your business by 10 or 20%, you have to reach 10, 15, 20,000 consumers, depending on the size of your firm, on a pretty regular basis to grow your business. And so one of the other myths that I would share with you that fits this conversation is, well, what do you say? I mean, what do you say in an ad? And one of the things that I'm excited about in the book, it talks about uh, the informative advertising style. In other words, this is how you can advertise your business, and it's not sales oriented. I mean, sales oriented would be something like, "Hey, we're having a big sale this weekend at Shay's Furniture. You know, recliners are save 50%." It's not that at all. What it is, it's more about educating and informing the consumer about what the funeral home does. And what's unique about our style and what I believe is a breakthrough piece in this book is the informative advertising style uses real people.
Absolutely. I like that approach. Like you said, the insurance company, think about your child and
Yeah,
what are they going to be stuck with? Can they make those decisions? Do they know what you want? I know my own family doesn't want to hear what I want. And I laughed, but I said, this is what I do for a living.
yeah,
You're going to have to listen because I do know what I want because I think about it every day.
sure.
I do like that approach. Here being in the Northeast, again, I'm in the Massachusetts, Rhode Island area, and very traditional, very conservative,
Hmm.
traditional concept. And a lot of those thought processes that dictate our industry did come from this area. So you don't see advertisements, not a billboard. And then all of a sudden I travel and you go and there's a billboard for the funeral home like a real estate agent would do, or like it's on the park bench and it's like, whoa, what is this? Like
Yeah.
I would never think about putting my face on the side of a bus, but that's it's a different, maybe it's just a different,
Well, I
place
think
out
I
there.
think that idea, that notion of putting doing an ad on a bus, that that is all about. I mean, of course, a bus ad is,
Mhm.
2 or 3 words, and that's about it. And it depends on what kind of funeral home do you have. And one of the things that in the book that I'm really excited about is it breaks down the different kinds of funeral homes that can potentially be in a market. And so some of the categories are the premier funeral home, the one that's always been there, the one that everybody goes to or refers to. There's this funeral home called the aspirant funeral home. This is the funeral home that wants to be big, wants to be better, but as a result of time constraints or maybe lack of industry knowledge, they're somewhat hesitant, although they're willing to do it. And then there's another type of funeral home that we talk about, and that basically is describing a business that is that's stagnant. In other words, it's there, it's been doing business for years, but it has what we call an essentialist advertising style, where everything is based on relationships, word of mouth, and
Mhm.
tradition. So that whole thing about are you willing to advertise, this is the thing that I think is really cool. And this comes from Seth Godin. He's a marketing expert, for all types of businesses. In fact, he's got an awesome book that we refer to throughout the book, and the name of the book is called "This Is Marketing" by Seth Godin. And of course, Seth Godin would be to the marketing industry like Todd Van Beck was to the funeral industry,
Mhm.
just absolutely
The
at the
legend, yeah.
top of the list. And he talks about the best advertisers create tension in the mind of a consumer. Tension. So when I say it creates tension in the mind of the consumer, Dan, what does that mean to you?
Breaking the water, I would say is right. You're breaking the water and you're getting to their attention.
Well, what tension means is think about this. And as a kind of a finish to the last thing you were talking about, to me, there are two kinds of consumers. One has been served by funeral homes, and the other has not. And those that have been served by funeral homes receive funeral advertising very positively because they know what it's all about.
Mhm.
But think about this: somebody walks into a funeral home for the first time ever, and they've never seen the deceased, never, right? So they're a little nervous, and we could call that tension. But what's going on in their mind, Dan, and think about it like this. In our book, we talk about the quote in here about death is for thee. Helen Kubler Ross, death is for thee, but not for me. In
Okay.
other words, your subconscious mind does not believe that you will ever die, ever. Now you can, because we're in the funeral industry, we can say, well, everybody's going to die, but your subconscious mind doesn't believe that. And so as a result of that, there is a conflict because you're walking into a funeral, never been in one before, never seen the deceased before, and now all of a sudden you're seeing a reality. So there's a conflict there. And one of the other things about funeral homes that is unique is what goes on in that building. I mean, what do they do behind those walls? There's a mystery to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So with that mystery and all those unknowns, then for marketers and advertisers to break through, they need to provide education or information that relieves tension. And who better to do that than a face at the funeral home that you ultimately begin to trust?
Mm-hmm.
And so this notion of seeing ads on billboards and doing all this kind of stuff, that's fine. But we believe, and this is what we promote, we believe that funeral homes are well served when their advertising messages are delivered in Facebook or any media they choose with real people.
Yeah.
Real people.
Yeah. And we're seeing a lot more of that, which is kind of promoted by what you're doing. We're seeing a lot more of that where it's like, hey, I'm the funeral director's daughter, and I love those kind of things. And given we're going to have a couple out there that, what we call the funeral handlers, we're going to have a couple out there that maybe don't give us the best image. But I think that there's a lot of them out there that are giving a good, like, hey, we're going out and this is kind of what we're doing in good taste, or kind of giving some humor, like, hey, we're splashing each other with water as we're trying to get this hearse because dad's joking with us or something. Oh wow, these are humans. Like, these funeral directors are not dark people in suits. Like, these are real people. Like, this could be my neighbor. And I like that vision of.
Absolutely. And you know this. I mean, when a funeral professional meets somebody and they don't know what they do for a living, and then the funeral professional says, well, I'm a funeral director. A lot of times that individual now is uncomfortable. I mean, so again, you go back to talking about tension, and they're uncomfortable because you work with dead people and you do those things. And again, it's one of those things where if they have been served, and that's why you want to market and advertise to an older demographic, if they've been served, then those messages are very well received. And we're Facebook experts. We work in Facebook. All of our clients are in Facebook, although we are now branching out into television and radio. And we see when we put the face of a funeral home owner or operator or funeral director or assistant or office administrator, when we put their faces on Facebook, Facebook users interact with them in a way that tells them that they love them. And so how can that be a bad thing?
Earlier, you were saying how people feel like funeral homes at least feel like, well, everybody knows me and I know I've been around long enough. To some degree, they're right. I mean, there was a car accident, you hear it on the news, and all of a sudden, your phone's going to ring because you know that you're the guy that services that area or that family, or there's some reality to that.
Yeah.
The other thing was that families, only any given individual, I think the averages will only have a death every 13 years in their family, like in their immediate family, that you're involved in a service. So, I mean, the way I think about that when it comes to marketing too is that's great that these generations before you went to the same funeral home. But today, how many people are mobile and traveling over the place, and now I'm not in an area of my family, and I'm going to pick the funeral home that I've heard of, or I've seen the sign of, or I've been on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, well, I've seen that name before. I don't know where I saw that name, but I saw that name before, and subliminal messaging going on. But, I choose that because I'm not in that same area that my family grew up anymore, where maybe that's where they all went.
Well, you just mentioned the big aha moment in this book because you talked about a subliminal message. So the consumer's journey describes what we call the funeral sales funnel. And the sales funnel looks like any other marketing funnel. In other words, it's a metaphor, it's a visual that will show marketers the different phases consumers will go through prior to buying something. And funerals are big ticket items. They're not as big as cars or homes, but when the consumer goes through the different phases of the sales funnel, they're not going to watch, listen, or purposefully read and remember anything. In other words, you could play ads to them all day, and if the average consumer is exposed to 4 to 6 to 10,000 ads a day, why would they remember a funeral home ad? And the answer is they won't. They won't. So if they won't, then why would you advertise? And here's the answer to that, Dan. And it has to do, as you said, was there's somewhat of a subliminal message. What it is, though, it's the power of the consumer's subconscious mind. So in other words, and you think about this, because I'll ask this question when I do a seminar, has anybody bought a car in the last 6 months or so? And I was speaking in Saratoga last year in New York State, and somebody raised their hand and said, yeah, I just bought a red Mercedes. And so I asked this question. I said, isn't it interesting to you that before you bought this car and then after you bought that car, all of a sudden you saw red Mercedes-Benz cars everywhere? Wasn't that interesting? And it's like, yeah, that happened. Well, that is your subconscious mind trying to bring that car into your life. And this is what we talk about all the time. Your subconscious mind is dedicated to bringing into your life what you're thinking about most of the time. So if somebody came to you and said, you have 6 months to live, you have 6 months to live, or maybe a loved one, you have 6 months to live, what will be foremost on your mind for the rest of your life if you're the one that's dying? And the answer is your death. That's all you think about. Mm-hmm. And what ends up happening is you think about it all the time. When you go to bed, you're going to be thinking about it. When you wake up, you're still going to be thinking about it. And it's those moments when you are falling asleep or waking up when your subconscious mind is the most receptive to learning what it is you're thinking about most of the time. So it's when the consumer gets into what we call the desire phase. It goes interest, awareness, interest, and then desire. When they get to the desire phase, they've been triggered. Something in their life has triggered them, and now all they think about is death and the funeral process, and they have a lot of questions. And that's when they start seeing, reading, and purposefully remembering ads for funeral homes. And they may not think to themselves, oh, I see this guy all the time. But when they see that picture of that funeral director, they're going to say, that's a familiar face. And the answer is it's a familiar face because they've seen it many times before.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. And, in these platforms, whether it be Facebook or Instagram or any of them, they all kind of, we all laugh that they kind of know what we're thinking, and it's true. I have a phone call and all of a sudden I look and, scrolling Facebook and all of a sudden, sure enough, it's advertising exactly what I was talking to my friend on the phone with, or the fact that I was painting and I must have been Googling something. I was probably Googling something and I went on my deck painting. Now I can't get away from easel ads and paintbrush ads on my Facebook feed because I was painting on my deck yesterday. And I don't know because I don't remember. Right. I don't remember Googling paintbrushes, but somehow it knew I was painting because now it's all over my Facebook feed. So, so I can see where you're saying this. Like if I'm thinking about death, now I'm looking up wills and I'm looking up these things or I'm talking to my friends about it. My phone's listening, joke about that, but it does, so, here it is and it knows what's going on. What ads are now going to show up? That's targeted marketing. Facebook is showing that.
Well,
to some degree,
there
right?
is targeted marketing. There's and retargeting is certainly, and what you're describing, Dan, is retargeting. What I'm talking about is if you are engaged in brand advertising and you are consistently advertising to consumers in the awareness and interest phase of the funeral process, then when all of a sudden they have been triggered and now they're starting to see your ads, what we're hoping that they do is see our clients' ads. In other words, this is the business that is advertising, and they are advertising a brand. Here are the faces of the people that you can trust. And as a result of that, when a consumer goes to Google or Yahoo or whatever and searches The goal is that they don't search on funeral home near me or cremation services. They're searching on the name of the business.
Yeah.
And that's the big benefit of any funeral home or any retail advertiser that's actively involved in brand advertising.
The first page in every marketing or business book was in entrepreneurship was location, location, location. So basically what you're now doing is you're taking them off the street now that everyone's kind of clustered themselves to their houses in this digital age, that the location is no longer physical. Now the location is in a virtual world is what you're putting them at. Would it be right?
Well, when we talk about location as it relates to the funeral business, and we talk about this in the book, is that funeral homes are neighborhood businesses. They're, and depending on the community, it could be a business for the town. In other words, it has a known geographic area. And so whenever you're engaged in marketing and advertising, you want to geofence all of your efforts so that you're reaching the right people in the right age in the right areas. And what's always interesting to me, Dan, is that you can have 2 or 3 funeral homes owned by the same firm, owned by the same company, but they could have 2 or 3 different kinds of funeral homes. And again, they're based on the areas that they serve. There are some funeral homes that are price-oriented funeral homes, and that's all they focus on is price. And then there are other funeral homes that focus on something that we'll call specialty. Maybe they're focused on a specific ethnic group, or they're focused on a specific religious group. In other words, they're focused on a specialty group. And so it's vitally important that marketers identify who their ideal consumer is for their business. And that's what we attempt to do with this book is here's the funeral home type that you are. Here's the funeral buyer type that you're most interested in. And what's fascinating to me is that in the book, you'd think it'd be a zillion funeral buyer types, and I've actually broken it down into 4. There's an at-need buyer, there's a pre-planned buyer, there's a what we call a customizer, and then there's the price-sensitive buyer. Those are the 4 kinds of buyers. But within like the price-sensitive buyer, we have this thing called the investigator. So, and there's something unique. You made the comment about funerals are purchased every 13 years. Well, those consumers do not know how to research a funeral home. But sometimes investigators, like if I'm investigating buying a car, I'm looking at all kinds of cars. They're an investigator versus a shopper. And a shopper doesn't know the questions to ask. They're a little bit naive. And I guess they have to ask about pricing. But it's important to know not only the buyer type, but the persona of the buyer type. And the book details many different kinds of personas in each of those 4 categories. And so that whole matching of a funeral home type and a buyer type, that's called matching thinking patterns. Thinking patterns. So when you match a thinking pattern, and if you have an ad that's worded in a certain way, then you're appealing specifically to a certain kind of person. For example, let's just say that your funeral home is an emerging funeral home and you're interested in new people in the market. Well, what should your advertising say if you're targeting those people? And it may start with, hey, if you're new to the area, welcome. I'm Bill Johnston. I'm a funeral director at Johnston Funeral Home. And you talk about everybody knows who we are. I think I saw a North American Van Lines study. It's like only 10% of a market will say it's been there for 35 years or longer. Only 10%. So where'd everybody else come from?
Right.
So that's why it's important that you be engaged in what we advocate, which is brand advertising.
Absolutely. And it's, it is amazing how much we've moved around compared to previous generations to that point, or even like if you even try to start a new funeral home, your name isn't out there, so you don't have that. So now how do you get your business up and running? Previously, I ran a company for many years, and the same thing. You start out, and I did pretty good. I got my name out there, I marketed, and I did what you're saying. I built an established rapport with people, and then they're like, how did I know I need something? Where do I find that? And before they knew it,
Yeah.
they didn't realize why they heard about us. But a lot of businesses last 3 to 5 years, I think, because they don't establish that customer base because they don't know, and that's even outside the funeral industry, I believe, right? So, um, how do we educate? That's my question. How can we educate the consumer so that way when they do purchase this funeral years down the line, they're not
Yeah.
walking in saying, I don't know what to ask. One, they've already had their questions answered up to that point, maybe, but I
Right.
how do we do that? Because I know that we have a lot of people come in, and when they sit at that arrangement table with us, it's I just want whatever we did for mom back 20 years ago, and now you're pulling out of the file drawer what you did for mom, and you're like,
Yeah.
one, mom's not the same religion. Two, that was 20 years ago. We can do something completely different now. Um,
Right.
how do we educate?
Well, there's a couple things that we're talking about here. One is, uh, well, again, I'll go back to this concept of the informative advertising style. So, with the informative advertising style, over time, key staff members in the funeral home, whether it be in a Facebook ad or a TV ad or a radio ad, their face and their personality becomes associated with that business. Now, having said that, not every funeral home has that luxury because not every funeral home has been there forever or has been a market leader or whatever. But over time, those people that are there, if they are seen often enough, what they're doing is establishing trust in the mind of the consumer.
Mhm.
And you talk about your resume and how long it may have taken you to establish yourself in the position as
Mhm.
someone that can be trusted. What we're talking about is because of rising cremation rates and lowering sales margins, some businesses are going to need to expand to keep that lifestyle that they've got going or to keep that cash flow that they've got going. And as well as I do, Dan, each market has a finite number of deaths.
Mhm.
And so, how do you advance the ball quicker? And the answer is going to be, well, first of all, you have to start, and then you have to have some level of confidence that what you're doing is correct. And so, by using the informative advertising style, it gives a funeral home person the ability to talk about things that consumers may want to hear.
Mhm.
For example, here'd be a topic. One topic could be, I get asked this question all the time. What goes on in this building? What happens at a funeral home?
Mhm.
And the answers to that are surprising. As a funeral director, as I walk through our halls, I certainly hear I certainly hear tears and I see them, but I also hear people laughing. People are coming together to celebrating a life. What I'm doing is not to benefit the deceased, and I know that's what we do.
Mhm.
But what my focus is for the people who are surrounding them. And you see what I'm saying? That ad's talking about what happens in that building.
Mhm.
And it's being delivered by somebody that you can trust. My second client in the funeral business, the late Jim Lau in Burlington, North Carolina, I asked Jim what made his business unique. And without any hesitation, Danny said, it's our people. Our
Mhm.
people make our firm unique. And so you can take many different funeral homes in America, and if you remove the people and replace them with new people, there's a really good chance that business is going to be rocky for a year or two. Okay? It's going to be rocky for a year or two. But again, this style of advertising is for businesses that I would call to be the premier funeral home, certainly the emerging funeral home, or the essentialist that wants to grow. And we call that the plateaued firm. So, in other words, the plateaued firm, and you know this, there's somebody that may be doing 100 calls a year, and that's all they've ever done. And their margin, they're not growing, they're kind of just staying the same.
Mhm.
But if all of a sudden there's a new family member involved, or they're purchased by somebody and there's now an active manager, they can start doing some of the marketing and advertising things to grow their business
Mhm.
and do it in a way where they're not talking about a recliner sale.
Now, how easy is this? We're probably one of the industries that keeps people in the industry the longest, right? Like we're one of the industries that can say someone's been licensed for 40, 50 years. We can all think of our colleagues that are. But um we have people in the older generation, we have people in the much younger generation coming in. How easy is this to do? Can somebody at any stage of the game pick this up and do this? Or is this something that they should get the new people involved in?
Well, first of all, I think anybody can do it. I think that what ends up happening, and this is and one of the things we talk about early on in the book is change.
Mhm.
Okay, so when does change occur? When do people make a change? And the answer is, think about it like this, Dan. Change occurs when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same.
Mhm.
I'll say that again. Change occurs when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. And so, when would pain occur for a funeral business? And typically, they're going to see it on a balance sheet. If the number is shrinking on a balance sheet, there's an alert. We got to do something about this. And it's not the kind of thing where, and you know this in the funeral industry, it's not the kind of thing you can say, let's have a big sale this weekend. Let's do something big. It's not like that.
Mhm.
But now, having said that, you can be engaged in events that bring the market a little bit closer to you. For example, we have one client in North Carolina. They just had their 28th annual 4th of July parade. Where does everybody meet to start? At the funeral home. And so, that whole community connection, it comes from events like that. And events can be hard. I know they can be hard, but like one event that will come up in around Christmas time will be a candlelight service.
Mhm.
What's one of the benefits of a candlelight service? And the answer is, for those who have recently experienced a death, it gives them an opportunity to connect with a funeral home. But it also gives families the opportunities to mingle with each other
Mhm.
and talk about their experience at that funeral home. And so it's certainly a retention type of part of what they call the sales funnel in the journey for to purchase funeral services. It's in the retention phase. But again, you can have events that attract people in the community, and then by doing that, again, just like you talked about, they see somebody hosing off a car and having fun. They connect in a different way.
The candlelight services are always amazing. I love going to those too, even if I'm not connected, I'll go and support colleagues. But you see people going to the funeral home that haven't been there in a while. They're coming kind of at an intermediate point where they're not in the rough anymore, but they're still
Yeah,
going through their grief. But they get to experience that, see the funeral home in different light because it's not with somebody of their loved one in a casket up front anymore.
right.
Oh no, yeah, that kind of stuff is amazing. And
Yeah.
and you mentioned the balance sheet. How long should we wait to see those results? Because I mean, I sit there and I'm throwing these advertisements out and I'm doing all this work and posting things to my social media, and I look and I just a couple weeks later I'm looking going, hey, I'm not seeing results. Like, why am I even wasting my time? And all of a sudden my efforts start to die down because I'm not seeing results and I
You
lose
don't.
motivation.
Yeah.
How long should I wait, say like, no, this is coming? Like, what's the forward goal?
No.
How long should
No.
it take?
Well, the thing. Here's the thing: is advertising is like computer software. You know, advertising is like computer operating systems. They're always changing. They're always evolving.
Mhm.
And if you think about the what we call, it's called the sales funnel, and I know it's going to be hard to see it on here, but here's the sales funnel. Okay, there's the sales funnel: awareness, interest, desire, action, and then retention. Okay. Well, here's the thing about a funnel, Dan, is that you can pour stuff in it, but stuff always coming out, which means you need to pour new stuff in it. And so the consumer is changing as they go along. And so advertising is something that you would be engaged in forever. And so what you have to know then is is the advertising that you're engaged in going to work? And there's a certain aspect of faith involved with all those things. But will it work? And that's why one of the chapters, which I think is in all three of my books, teaches a funeral professional how advertising works. And it's based on the four pillars of effective local advertising. Do all four things correctly, and you will get the kind of results that you seek, provided you're reaching enough people, enough times, and the market conditions are favorable to you. What happens is, and this would be a perfect example, here's somebody that buys radio. I was in radio for 25 years. Here's somebody who buys radio advertising. They spend $1,000 a month, and they've never changed their ad. It's always the same ad because it's so hard to write another one. And so what ends up happening is that ad plays over and over and over and over and over again, and the consumer's subconscious mind tunes it out.
Yeah.
Something we already know. But if the ad's changing every month, if the Facebook ad is different every time you see a new face or a different view of somebody, you see the interior. In other words, there's always fresh copy. Mm-hmm. And you show it enough times to enough people, then reach, frequency, consistency, and copy. Do all four things correctly. That works. So that's the answer to the question is do it correctly. And what we have found, what we figured out is, especially for funeral homes that doing 150 calls or less a year, they have to be on Facebook to grow their business because Facebook is the largest media of any market that they are in. Mm-hmm. You know, I think about, we've got a client in Baltimore, for example. How many TV stations are there in Baltimore? How many radio stations are there in Baltimore? How many billboards are there in Baltimore? I mean, it's a huge market. But our customers more interested in people who live within 7 miles of their business. Mm-hmm. And that's where they need to establish themselves, reach, frequency, consistency, and copy. So it gets down to, are you doing the right things? Are there enough people seeing it? Mm-hmm. Are they seeing it frequently enough? So when they're triggered, your funeral home is the only and obvious choice. That's our goal.
And I love that message too, because I mean, it really is. You go down the street and now there's so many billboards and there's so many different things and there's just so many radio stations, so many. Yeah, how do you pick the right one? And so you do need that one centralized. What are the most people going to listen to? And I know there's, yeah.
Yeah, where are your ideal consumers? The great thing about Facebook is the largest media of in any market in America. It reaches 68% of all consumers. It reaches 58% of adults 65 plus. 58%. It reaches 77% of women. Okay, 3 out of 4 women can be reached on Facebook. So that's why I'm saying, when you're in that 150 or less bucket in the funeral business, you got to be on Facebook, and you got to be using ads featuring real people, and you got to boost your advertising, and you've got to just continue to make it grow. When you get into bigger numbers, that's when you can consider using radio. But the key thought about radio, Dan, and especially like in a market that you're in Rhode Island. Okay, well, you can hear stations from Manhattan. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's just zillions of radio stations right now to choose from. But is there a radio station in your community that reaches what I'll call a critical mass of ideal consumers? And, you know, it could be the worst radio station in the market, smallest one, but they have an obituary column every day. And so those 600 people listen to it every day because of the obituary column. Don't you think those 600 people represent ideal consumers?
Yeah.
The answer would be absolutely. Yeah. So you gotta know what you're doing.
I'm dating myself, but probably 20 something years ago, I was talking to someone that same thing, sold air. And he was telling me that he goes in, he was talking to this old laundromat. He goes, look, can't we just upgrade your plan? We're going to get you a better thing. And she goes, no, I want my 30 seconds or a minute or whatever it was on Tuesdays at this time. That's all I'm paying you for. He goes, but come on, let's talk. And she finally got frustrated, and she pointed to the sign above her head at the laundromat that said, tune in on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. for our specials of the week. And because he was because he wasn't listening. He wasn't listening to what she wanted. She goes, "No,
Yeah.
people know that it's Tuesdays at 6 p.m. You tune in. This is what you get from me." So it's
Yeah.
maybe that's your,
And the,
what are we doing?
and the same would be if that radio station does obituaries. And I recognize
Mhm.
that obituaries are going to be done by radio stations in smaller markets.
Yeah.
But still, that's and the other thing about that too, though, is that if you think about this, you're reaching the same audience every day. Okay, well then that means you've got to change your advertising.
Right.
So every month you need a new ad,
Right.
and it's not that hard to do, Dan. It's just that a lot of times people in broadcasting or anybody in media, if they're going to write an ad for a funeral home and then they listen to somebody who's a funeral professional, what ideas are they going to get? Well, we've been here for 70 years, and we customer service is what we're all about, and we care. In other words, all the same broken things, and you got to get all those things in 60 seconds. Try it. It's
Yeah.
impossible.
No, it's
And
not easy.
it might take you 2 hours to write it, and then I got to do that every month. I'm not doing it. It's too hard. It's too hard. And so what we do is, I write ads for clients every month, and they get 2 new ads from me every month. It's not a shameless plug, but still,
Mhm.
we write on specific topics.
Mhm.
Topics.
Yep.
We talked about the topic of your beautiful facility.
Mhm.
Uh, so what about the topic of being a funeral director? I'm proud to be a funeral director. I love serving families. I help them when they need me.
Mhm.
And so what would be wrong with an ad about our team? All of us are here. We're if we ever are called, we work together as a team.
Mhm.
There are all kinds of topics that you can write about that create new ads, and that's where that forward momentum we talk
Mhm.
about in this book that comes from Seth Godin, providing forward momentum that allows funeral homes to relieve tension.
Right. Or even relation like, hey, this is our new staff member. They graduated this college, this high school, and part of the Rotary Club. And, hey, and guess who gets to share that? All these clubs are like, hey, look at our person just got hired. And, now
Yeah,
now you got people sharing the
yeah,
ad. Yeah. So
yeah.
absolutely.
But we figured out that Facebook really only works with paid advertising.
Hmm.
If you are going to, we have some clients that have 5 or 6 or 7,000 page likes, and they do get organic activity, especially for their obituaries. But when it comes to branding people or branding your facility or talking about pre-planning as a topic or as a product, that's when repetition
Hmm.
comes in, and that's when you need to buy ads so that they appear in the news feed of the market that you're trying to reach.
Hmm. By pushing that, because you can set those perimeters within there that say who you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we use the Facebook Business Manager. And, the great thing about the Facebook Business Manager is that if ads clear in Facebook, they also clear in Instagram, which is the second biggest social media out there,
Mhm.
other than YouTube. But YouTube is more of a streaming service. Facebook sets itself up as a beautiful advertising vehicle.
Mhm. Absolutely. And you can't scroll Facebook or Instagram or any of those now without seeing an ad every
Yeah.
few things. So they're
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
you can set how many clicks or how many, so I can say, hey, there's my budget, or hey, I got 3 months. I want to
Yeah.
spread this out a little bit. Yeah.
You'd be surprised you're not bombarding the world because, again, it gets into that whole, people see your ads when they have been triggered.
Mhm.
So, other than that, the purpose of your advertising is to establish what we call an equity position in the mind of your ideal consumer.
What other areas of marketing will this book help us with?
Well, I think this is the primary focus is to give funeral home owners, operators, employees, corporations the ability to look at a funeral home differently as certainly some a business that deserves advertising. And one of the interesting chapters in the book is about how to grow a business. How to grow a business. There's only 4 ways to grow a business. And so if there's only 4 ways to grow your business, then if you're going to be running an advertising campaign,
Mhm.
it needs to be within one of those 4 ideas. Because otherwise, what are you saying and what are you trying to promote? But this, I mean, it's purely a marketing and advertising book. I'm not coming to anybody to claim that I'm an expert in the funeral industry, but I do offer some sales tips. I do. My last chapter in the book is called a riff, and I do offer some sales tips that are not necessarily tongue in cheek, but they make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's right in your subtitle, right? A marketing roadmap. You're laying out the road. You're laying the road out, and so basically, if I get this book, I could follow this, and this is going to lay the path out of what I need to do. This is going to give me the steps.
It's certainly a thought starter, and if you decide to read the book and then download, there's a set of worksheets that come with the book. If you decide to download the worksheets, you can use those worksheets to help you build that map. But the idea through all of this, and the message the question I continually ask is, do you know who you are, and do you know what you stand for?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who you are, and do you know what you stand for? And a lot of funeral homes may not be able to answer that question. And so we challenge them to answer that question specifically for them, so that if they know who they are and they know what they stand for, then it would stand to reason that they should be able to begin to think about who their ideal consumer is,
mm-hmm.
and how to reach them effectively.
Or even maybe reconsidering what you stand for and reconsidering who you are based off of your market. Because if I come out, I got Canadian blood and Irish blood. I work for a funeral home that's, but I'm pulling these people in and say, well, I may be having this market. This may be the market that we service, but it doesn't seem like that's the market we're servicing well, because there's other funeral homes doing it. Maybe this is our time to reevaluate the market rather than sticking with what we think we have.
And again, a lot of that change comes probably initially from looking at a balance sheet and thinking, well, we got to grow our business. How are we going to do that? And things are always changing. The cremation rate is not going to go down. And so how are you going to maximize every sales opportunity? And, over time, you're going to probably see some firms just going to kind of evaporate because of market conditions.
Yeah. And I know that's something that's kind of plagued us all, is how do we change? Because if you don't change, that's going to be the evil, that's always the underlying evil, is if we don't change, you don't have a business. Because the market is changing and the consumer has changed so much that we need to keep up, and we need to find a new, like cremation. If you're sticking with your traditions, you're going to lose your business. You got to find ways to still maintain business and profit on your balance sheet off of this lower cost service. Sure. So absolutely, absolutely to find that, find your niche in that. Now, if someone's reading your book and they still have, they want extra help, they want to be, have you take them under their wing, you have a business that can do that too, right? That you can help them with.
We do that. Yeah. Our focus is in Facebook. We are a Facebook expert for funeral homes. And so we write for funeral homes throughout America. It was interesting. We had one of our clients was a beta reader for the book. And after he read it, he said, we got to do TV. And they're positioned as an emerging funeral home, and their market and the premier funeral home has gone through some changes. And so they sensed an opportunity to become the premier funeral home and to grow their call volume. And so in addition to doing work on Facebook, now they're going to be on television.
Of course, advertising a bad looking funeral home isn't going to help you any. So maybe picking key parts of your funeral home that look good, or building the infrastructure around it, would you say, is going to help that image?
Well, the product, it has to be a good product.
Yeah.
It has to be a good product. I know we have one client that is in a market where a number of their competitors have funeral homes that look dated. Mm-hmm. And my client has a beautiful funeral home. And so what they discovered is their business grew immediately because Facebook users could see the beauty of their funeral home.
Yeah. And we're saying about location. If you drive by, especially, you don't necessarily, you're driving, oh yeah, that's a funeral home, and you drive by as quickly as you can. Maybe not that you're speeding, but you're going by, you're not paying attention. Why would I turn and look at it unless it's this beautiful Victorian house, and some of them are. I'm not going to sit there and look, but sometimes
Yeah.
you wonder what the inside looks like, or you see this okay building, it's brick on the outside. You walk in, oh, they're gorgeous, absolutely
Yeah.
gorgeous on the inside. And I would want my service there, but based off of the outside, I would have never known what was beyond those walls. And I've seen the opposite as well.
Exactly. And facility, chapel and facility is a topic
Mhm.
that we write to. We know that some funeral homes have the most beautiful chapels in their community, bigger and nicer than churches.
Yeah.
And so, how can a consumer imagine where they are going to have their funeral or their funeral for a loved one
Mhm.
if they don't know where it's going to be and what it's going to look like and who's going to help me? And that's why we really like Facebook, because Facebook lets you see where it will be. Here's a funeral director in a chapel where a life will be celebrated.
Mhm.
Here's a funeral professional in a room where a funeral can be planned. Here's our foyer where you walk in and we welcome you. So all these images, physical images, are part of that, using real people, part of advertising for a funeral home.
And it almost becomes the Pinterest of funerals as well to some degree, because now I'm seeing that, I'm seeing the chapel, I'm seeing the staff, which I'm becoming personable. Oh, you know, I'm recognizing a face now. I know something about that person. Hey, I'm maybe the funeral director's a veteran and saying, look, we're doing a veteran services and this is what we do. Hey, I
Right.
want to go there. Or,
Yeah.
hey, like personally, I'm a big hiker, skier, camper. That's my thing. So if I saw that and went, wow, they're doing something with an outdoorsy theme, and I can see that in the backdrop of this image as they're talking, that just got
Right.
my attention
Well,
of like, that's the Pinterest. If I want that, tell my family I want that as well.
well, again, if you think about that, what you just described is
Hmm.
one of the four funeral home types is a specialty funeral home.
Hmm.
Specialty can be green.
Yeah.
A lot of what you just described is green.
Hmm.
So how do you advertise that?
Yeah.
And see, again, if you're advertising green, green may not be just based on a person or people. Green is based on another idea. And so if you're talking about advertising green, then who sees those messages and what type of relationship do you have where the deceased is buried and all those things. So
Hmm.
all it gets down to is that, uh, who are your ideal customers and matching your funeral home to their patterns, thinking patterns,
Hmm.
and then understanding that it doesn't have to be based on just one idea. In other words, if you're running campaigns, you can have a pre-planning campaign running all the time.
Hmm.
And for those businesses that prefer direct marketing, and of course we know who direct marketing companies are, but you can advertise for trying to get direct results, whether it's a click or somebody is actually downloading something,
Hmm.
or they're making a phone call. But you want to make it easy for people to take action, if that makes sense.
So you got to get people to read this book. So you have a special coming up. The book is being released this Thursday, right? It's the 18th, you said?
Yes, it's coming out on Thursday, the 18th, and it will be on Amazon. And the special is 99 cents. So the Kindle version of the book will be 99 cents. Now, Dan, it is a bestseller campaign. In other words, I'm shamelessly shamelessly throwing myself at friends and family and funeral professionals to get them to just simply buy the book for 99 cents. Because we're hoping to have a bestseller status, which is what we're going for, and that's always exciting. But the book is only 99 cents, and it is a comprehensive uh, book. It helps you visualize the consumer's journey using the sales funnel. And this is the key thought with all this is the way that we think.
Mhm.
And we talk about this when we speak. We think in pictures. We think in pictures. And so this book is designed to help a funeral professional visualize how to grow their business using marketing and advertising. So if you were to go to our website, postandboost.com/the consumer's journey, postandboost.com/the consumer's journey, that's where there will be a link where you can actually register to get the email alert that will come out on Thursday. So that would be the easiest way for anyone who wants to figure out how to connect with us.
And people will be listening to this podcast episode for a while. So this is July 18th of 2024. If you listen to it in the future, they'll always be able to get this on Amazon. And you said the physical copies they can put on the same website.
Yeah, if they go to Amazon and they don't get anything from me, but if you go to Amazon on Thursday, just search for The Consumer's Journey to Purchasing Funeral Services. It'll come up on Thursday.
Okay.
And you can just search for the book and buy it that way. After that sale is done, the printed version will come out. And once the printed version comes out, then the actual audio version of the book hopefully will be released. I think my goal is by mid-August. So I'm reading the book right now. I'm up to chapter 7 in the book. And hopefully people will like my voice.
Hopefully, I think they will. And you'll also be at the NFDA conference in October as well when we're in New Orleans.
We are speaking, will be both 8 o'clock on Monday and Tuesday. It will be on this topic, the consumer's journey. And if you are in New Orleans and you come to my booth, I'd love to give you a copy of my book.
Excellent. And I know I'll be there, so I'll definitely be stopping by when I'm down there, and I hope everybody else does as well, so they get to hear you talk as well. It's the same talk for both days. Yes.
It will be it would be a CE, but it'll be the same seminar for 2 days. And also, I don't know if some of your viewers are in the New Jersey area, but we're speaking in New Jersey as well in September, twice on that Tuesday. So.
Oh, excellent. How do they get information?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're going to the New Jersey Funeral Directors event at, the place where the casinos are, Atlantic City, you can get a CE for me there. We do webinars as well, monthly webinars, and we're in the process of working with the Academy of Funeral Service Practice to get the Consumer's Journey approved, but apparently it's already been approved for our appearance in New Orleans.
Oh, excellent. So they got a couple opportunities they can hear you. Well, you definitely see me at your booth, so I'll definitely be stopping by on the expo floor.
Dan, we'd love to see you, buddy.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
For listening to this episode of Mortuary Mayhem. For links to information discussed during this episode, please visit the website at www.mortuarymayhem.com. Do you have questions, comments, suggestions for topics, or want to be a guest on the show? Email us at podcast@mortuarymayhem.com. We should do this again sometime.